This is a video on Intro to Excel. In this first video, we're just going to go through some of the basic features and functionality of Excel. If you look at this program, Excel program screen here, you can see a lot of the useful features that we'll be using. And you can, for instance, insert a new spreadsheet, delete a worksheet, select cells. And so I've got a spreadsheet open here to begin with, and you'll see here this file tab. So when we're inside a file, which we are here, up across the top, you can select different tabs and they have different functionality. I know that it seems like there is a lot of information up here, but if you take a look initially, we're just going to focus on a small amount of functionality. Predominantly for this class, we're going to use the Home tab. Okay, that's here. And in the Home tab, we've got formatting. So we'll use text formatting, font, how to format numbers, how to use shading with this paint can, how to use different color texts, how to wrap text. So this first tab is mostly formatting. In our second tab, the Insert tab, if I click up here, is where we're going to do our graphing and text boxes. So if we look here, we're primarily going to use, if we hover over this scatter plot, and then specifically we're going to pick this smooth line graph, okay? And then the other thing that we use here in the Insert tab would be text boxes. So if I click here, I can select this text box and I can create a text box to put annotations within my Excel file. All right. And lastly, if we go to the Data tab, this is here, Data, and you'll see Solver over here. For this class, we're just going to be using Solver, and you'll know that you installed Solver correctly when you click on or select the Data tab and you see this icon for Solver over here on the menu ribbon. Put that over to the side here. All right. You'll also note, if you're not familiar with Excel, that the cursor that we're using, you can see my cursor over here, depending upon what I'm, where I move it to, I get it looking differently. And the way that the cursor presents itself tells us what functionality that it's performing. So when I get this sort of hollow or empty plus sign, that means I'm selecting cells. So here I can use this to select cells. This I-beam is what we get if we're going to enter something into a cell. See now my I-beam, if I'm going to enter information into a cell, when I have this plus sign here, you can see as I move it to the bottom right hand corner, I have that solid black plus sign. That tells me that I can fill the table in. If I come up here between columns, you can see the double arrow here. Then I can use that to widen a column or make it smaller. And then when you see the arrow up and down, I can make rows fatter or more narrow. Lastly, we'll see here, a lot of times when you're looking for commands within Excel, if they say hold down the control key, just make sure that you're looking between a Mac versus a Windows PC. Typically, if we're dealing with a Windows PC, we're using the control key along with some other key to perform an operation. When we're in Mac, we use the command key. And so we're going to select non-adjacent cells to do graphing, and just be aware that when you're using a Windows PC, you're using the control key, which is in the bottom left-hand sort of panel of your keyboard. But when you're on a Mac, you're going to use the command key. All right, so if I look here, I'm going to bring this file over, and this wants us to use cell referencing to create formulas. All right, so when we do operations within Excel and we want to put a formula in here, I have an input of x and I have a function f of x equals 2x plus 1. So whenever I want to enter a function, I want to start with equal. I have to tell that cell that I want to do a calculation and I want it to be equal to 2, and I want to use the asterisk key or shift 8. It's that key above the 8, that symbol above the 8. And then I'm not going to type x in. I want to tell Excel that I want to reference where x is typed in. So in this case, x is typed in cell A2. So I can just click on that, plus 1. And if I hit enter, it's going to calculate it. And you can see here, let's say I take my cursor and I left click, and you can see I'm in column B, row 2. And you can see that little green box around that cell. And then you can look up in this corner here, the left-hand corner, that name box tells me which cell I'm in. So if I move down here, you can see that changed to B4. That tells me I'm in column B, row 4, and so forth. Okay, so now that I did that, if I want to fill in these other cells with this formula and reference my x values, I want to use this fill handle. All right, so I want my cursor to be that black plus sign. So I can, when I move my cursor around, it takes different shapes and presentations. I don't want to select these cells. I want to fill. I want to copy down. So when I see that black plus sign, I'm going to hold the left mouse and then I'm just going to drag down and it will automatically fill those cells. So if I double click on any one of those cells, I can see the formula that's in there, and I can see it up here in my formula bar. I can see I have 2 times the cell A4. Well, A4 is here. So I'm referencing this cell A4 plus 1 and so forth. When I come down here, you can see that for every 1 row I increase, it is referencing the next row of my inputs. If I want to fill this with a color, let's say I want to make that green for my outputs. You can see here this paint can. I've selected the cell by just clicking on it. That is the select cursor view. And then I just click on that and it will highlight that cell. I could make that wider or more narrow, okay, by sliding that right or left. So now it says that we want to create a graph of each function. So here I have my inputs in column A, I have my outputs in column B, and I want to select this whole table. So I want my cursor to be in select mode, and I can see it there, that white plus sign. So that's where I want to start, right here in A1. And now I'm going to left hold, click, and then I'm just going to select that whole table. Now I just pick my hands up and I have the whole table selected. I can move my cursor. So the graphs that we're going to create are going to be under the Insert tab. So now with that whole table selected, I click Insert, and then I come over here. You can see if you hover over these icons, it's going to give you a little bit more description as to what they do. I want this scatter category here, and I want to click that drop down, and I have a bunch of choices. The one we're going to be using mostly in this class is the scatter with smooth lines. Okay, please don't select this one with the markers. We mostly want this scatter with smooth lines. So if I click on that, you can see that now it has created a graph of these tables here. My input values are on the horizontal, my output values are on the vertical. And it's going to pull, if I select these 2 headers, it's also going to include those in my graph. And I can resize these graphs If I select it, I can make that smaller. I can drag it wherever I want. Okay. So down here, my next function, notice that I have this set up as an input-output table, but a horizontal table instead of a vertical table. So my first row are my inputs, and then my second row are my functions. So I want to enter this function here, 450 times 0.7 raised to the x value. So because I want to do a calculation here, I need to tell Excel I want that cell, I happen to be in cell B14, column B, row 14, I want that to be equal to 450 times 0.7, and then I'm going to use that caret key to raise something to a power. And where are my x values? I'm not going to type x in. My x values are in row 13. So I can just move my cursor and select cell B13. Okay? And so now, if I want to drag those across, I can select this cell, B14, by clicking on it. And now I can just see that fill handle and slide those over. So I've now created an input-output table, and you can just check your formulas by clicking, double-clicking, left-clicking in each cell. And you can see that this is 450 times 0.7 raised to what's in cell E5. E13 is the number 5. Okay, so if I want to create a graph of this, again, I just want to select the whole table. So when I want my cursor to be in select mode, it's that white plus sign. Now I'm going to left click and I'm going to select that whole table. I want to insert. Okay, be careful not to use this line graph. We want to use this under scatter plot and then here. Okay, so now I've created that. Okay, now let's go to the last example here. Notice here I've got this label here for revenue equals something. It's hard to read. So I intentionally didn't have this text wrap. If I click wrap text, now you can see that I've formatted this nicely. So we really do want to make sure that our work, we're able to present it in a way that is easily consumable by others that are maybe reviewing or using the information in our spreadsheet. All right, so now we have our input here. X is the items, but in column B, we're going to have revenue. Column C, we have costs, and column D, we have profit. Now notice they all have an input of X items. So we just need our first column to be our input. So let's define this. This is revenue is equal to 6 times, where's my X values? Right here. All right, and then I can, when I see that, so I can either drag those down or I can now double left click and it will automatically fill those values in. Let's define our cost function. Cost is equal to 2 times, I'm going to reference my X values, which are in column A, plus 300. I'm going to copy them down. All right, and then my profit, we know profit is revenue minus cost. So rather than typing those formulas in, I can say, I know that revenue is in column B and costs are in column C. I can just say that this cell, D20, that's where I am right now, I'm in cell D20 here, is equal to my revenue minus my cost. And I can fill those down. Okay, so let's say I wanted to create a graph for just the cost function. I would select column A, and then because C is not adjacent to or right next to column A, If you're using a Mac, you're going to now hold down the Command key. If you're using a Windows PC, you're going to hold down the Control key, and now you're going to select that non-adjacent column. Now I can insert a smooth line graph that's going to show costs. I could also select all the columns, let's say together here. I'll do revenue and cost, and I can graph those together. And it will put both of those together on the graph. So depending upon what you're asked, just be careful to pay attention. Again, if I want to just have the profit function, I'm first going to select column A. I'm going to take my hands off of my mouse, and then to just select column D, if I'm on a Mac, I'm going to hold down Command. If I'm on a Windows, I'm going to hold down Control and select that second column. And now I'm going to insert a smooth line graph, and that's going to give me profit.